Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menasce. Today's another AMA episode. That is, Ask Me Anything. I love to answer your questions, and if you have a question you think is going to be of broad interest, send it in. I'll answer it live on the air. Send your questions to victor@victorjm.com. That's victor@victorjm.com. Today's question comes from Jeremy in Virginia. He asks, I'm working on a concept for a light industrial warehouse building on a property that has some environmentally protected zones. The properties on either side are zoned light industrial and they're fully developed. In addition, there's a lot of development in the immediate area. I think the main reason this property hasn't been developed is the presence of the wetlands on the property. Would you consider developing it, and if so, under what conditions? Well, Jeremy, this is a great question. We've had our team take a close look at this particular land parcel. I get questions like this very often. Within our consulting division, we also get this type of question very, very often. Most of the time, when we get questions like this, the land cannot be easily developed. The zoning might allow it, but then there's an obstacle, maybe a wetland or an environmentally protected zone. Now, you do have that complication on your property, but you also have a rare case when, in fact, you can do something, you can develop that property. And more importantly, there's no question that something of real economic value can be built there. There will be restrictions and parts of the property cannot be developed. That part's clear. This parcel of land could be very attractive. There's generally a lot of demand in the market for small, light industrial flex space for businesses that need to store small amounts of inventory. In particular, there are thousands of small electronic commerce sellers who perform their own order fulfillment. Commercial space is too expensive. Some businesses even rent storage lockers and self-storage facilities for that purpose, but these are not really well suited to someone who's running a real business and sending shipments on a daily basis. A lot of businesses have been downsizing, moving into smaller real estate footprints. In most markets, there's actually a shortage of small business spaces that are in that 1,000 square foot range or less. Large-scale industrial space, like 100,000 square feet, can be rented pretty inexpensively, like $5 to $6 a square foot. But office space in many markets, even if it's small, rents for a minimum of $20 to $25 a square foot. It's too expensive. In your home market, I was able to find only one property that would compete directly with your concept at a similar price point. The feasibility of your project requires examination of a few factors. Number one, is there actually demand for the product you're proposing? And number two, what's the supply of that product or similar product in the market? The good news is there's only a handful of properties in the market that could be adapted to compete with you directly. And most of the commercial space for rent are much more expensive, above that $20 per square foot leasing rate. Flex space is generally in high demand by small business owners, and flex space also tends to attract businesses that need space, but for which a retail storefront is not that important. In fact, some of the older strip malls that have been adapted to that flex space, they rent for a similar price point, but they're not really an ideal fit for that use. There's about half a dozen within a 3-mile radius of your property. You're targeting to build a new product that would compete with the older product in that $12 to $14 square foot range. That could be a very competitive offering, and I think it'll do well. The only drawback I see is that some of the retail space which is renting at low rates also has a lot of parking. It would be good to speak with a local broker to see how easily those spaces are renting. If they've been vacant for a long time, then you would definitely want to understand why that is. Now, we do see demand for small space for businesses that have a physical requirement for a small home base or shop. I'm thinking of mobile locksmiths, HVAC contractors, electricians, small marine mechanic shops. All of these types of businesses can be fulfilled in a very small space. And there are situations like the one you found where a property sits undeveloped in plain sight for a long time. The perceived difficulty in developing that property can be a deterrent. But this small barrier can also create some bargains in the marketplace, and it looks like you've happened upon one of them. It looks very attractive and at an attractive price. Now, when real estate investors speak, they tend to talk about real estate, but I take the perspective of product development, and when you're developing a product for a specific client or a marketplace, it's important that as part of your product development, you know exactly what your customers require. Do they want a glass storefront, or do they want a 12-foot high garage door? Do they want an empty shell, or do they want some amount of tenant improvements included as part of the initial lease? If you're going to provide some tenant improvements, then you might consider having a few standard packages for interior fit-up that are already designed, priced, and ready to go. That way you demonstrate that the process of renting from you will be easier than the competition. You show that you've already thought through the customer's needs. I'd be very surprised if the tired old strip mall a few miles away has been doing that kind of marketing. So I'd like to encourage you to keep taking your proposal forward. I think it's got a ton of potential. I want to thank you, Jeremy, for a great question. And for the listeners at home, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. Talk to you again tomorrow.